can't wait. Back here with Chris Canty, and it has been a pretty rocky season for the Steelers. You got your contract holdouts, you got your quarterback finger pointing, you got sloppy play, and despite all of that, they still have a chance to make it to the postseason. If Pittsburgh beats the Bengals at home on Sunday and the Browns beat the Ravens, or less likely the Colts and the Titans tie, the Steelers, who've lost 4 of their last 5 games, are in the playoffs. Canty, how much does this season's story for the Steelers change if they do indeed make it to the postseason? Everything we just heard, does that all get erased?
I think it does, because you're talking about competing for a championship at that point. And so if you're one of the 12 teams that qualify for the tournament, I think it gets rid of all of the bad things that have gone on with this Pittsburgh Steelers team throughout this season. I mean, the distractions, the Le'Veon Bell holdout, Big Ben calling out his teammates and coaches. I mean, I think all of that kind of goes away and you lock in on this team trying to compete for a championship. But if they don't get in, CC, that's a big problem, because the Pittsburgh Steelers' expectations this season were to compete for a championship. You have a quarterback that's getting to the end of his prime in Ben Roethlisberger. You have arguably the best wide receiver in the game, Antonio Brown. And then, of course, coming into this year, we assumed that Le'Veon Bell would be a part of this team. Now, that hasn't been the case. Kevin Colbert played chicken with Lev Bell. And now when you're looking at where this team is at, and of course, this team being so one-dimensional offensively, I think you have to question some of the things, some of the decisions that this organization made coming into this year, because you jeopardize a chance to take advantage of a quarterback that you know is capable of winning a Super Bowl when the requisite talent is around him.
I think the only way this Steelers season can be salvaged is not only getting into the playoffs, but winning a couple playoff games. I don't think they can salvage it just by getting in, even if they were to win their first playoff game. It'd be a home playoff game. They'd be facing, probably the Chargers would be the most likely how it falls. But I don't think that necessarily salvages the season. I think when you come in with the expectations the Steelers have, where you had made the playoffs 4 consecutive years, you had for 3 straight years advanced around further, went from 1 and done, 2 and done, 3 and done. Then last year, you look positioned to finally get to the Super Bowl. You went 13-3, and you don't win a playoff game. That the fact that they are in this position to where they need help, they don't even control their own destiny to get into the postseason after being 7-2-1. That the only way that we're going to look back on this Pittsburgh season and say, hey, that was a good year, is if they do something they haven't done really at all in this era, which is not only get to the AFC Championship game, but upset the Patriots along the way. Like they're going to have to slay some dragons, to me, to offset what has been, by any metric, a disappointing year and an underachieving year.
But can I throw something out there? How about the fact that they are where they are despite not having Lev Bell all year? I mean, if you said, hey, they're going to have to get all the way back there without their stopped running back.
But they were 7-2-1 without Le'Veon Bell. It's not like he suffered a midseason injury and that's when it fell apart. Would they be better with him? Yes. Could they?
How many of those games in December could they have won?
Exactly. They lost 4 of the last 5 games, and in all of those games is 7 points or less.
No,
I mean, you're talking about really close ball games, and the difference of having Le'Veon Bell versus James Conner or Samuels, I mean, that could have been the difference in those games.
I agree with that. Of course, Le'Veon Bell makes them better, and I think if Le'Veon Bell were there, they would have at least 1, if not 2 more wins. I get it. But even without Le'Veon Bell, you should be able to hold on to a 16-point lead at home against the Chargers. Even without Le'Veon Bell, you should be able to beat the Raiders. And so just those 2 games changed the narrative of this season. So I don't think winning on Sunday and getting some help from Baker Mayfield salvages the year, C.
If you ask the Pittsburgh Steelers on the eve of the 2018 season being over with, you have to be waiting on the Cleveland Browns to win at Baltimore, and you would still have to win. That's a disappointment for the season. The organization, the goals they set every year, it's a disappointment. It's a disappointment because we've had Mike Tomlin part of the conversation. Is he going to get fired or not? That's a disappointing season. Ben Roethlisberger, the way that he's played in the red zone, given the amount of experience, Super Bowl playoff experience that he's got, and he's still in his prime. It's been a disappointment. This window, A.B., L. Bell, Ben Roethlisberger, it's been a disappointment. They've gotten rid of a bunch of coaches. It's been a disappointment. So regardless of what the Pittsburgh Steelers do, which I don't believe they're going to get into the playoffs, we're going to be on the show on Monday talking about, oh, they missed the playoffs. It's a disappointing. Is it a disappointing season? Yes, it's a disappointing season. They got high expectations on the organization. The players have high expectations, and they did not get it done. Simple as that.
I assume it's something Chris and I both independently seized on that we saw yesterday, and I want your perspective on it. I assume the teams you were on at the end of the year voted on some type of team MVP. So the Steelers have done this every year in their history. Ben Roethlisberger, they voted on it yesterday, and Juju won it. Antonio had won 4 of the previous 7, I believe. Ben's won it once in his career. It was 2009, a year they actually missed the playoffs. Does that say Ben's going to throw, he's leading the league in passing yards. He's going to throw for 5,000 yards despite the red zone interceptions. I think most people would say he's been the best guy on the team. Does that surprise you at all that he didn't win it this year and that he's won it so little in his career? And does that tell you anything about where some of the noise surrounding him on shows like this, that it's a real thing in that locker room?
Well, here's the one thing. I've never been on a team that's voted for a team MVP in that situation. Like, it's never been about
that's
that.
That's not a thing every team does?
That's not a thing that every team does. No.
Okay.
I mean, so I think that's kind of bizarre. But the fact that Ben Roethlisberger has only won it once, I mean, I guess it could speak to how that locker room sees him as a leader on that team. We always look at the quarterback position as a natural leadership position, but Ben Roethlisberger hasn't been a traditional quarterback in that sense because he's always been outspoken. He's always been opinionated, and some of those things have rubbed teammates, coaches, and people in the organization the wrong way. So I don't think Ben Roethlisberger is that guy in terms of the leadership characteristics that you would want to see from your quarterback. But in terms of the play on the field, he's been outstanding this year. I mean, the interceptions, that's one thing, but I think that's in part because he's got to make up for the inconsistencies with the ground game and not having Le'Veon Bell and being more aggressive in the passing game.
All right, well, look, Pittsburgh is definitely going to have to go out there and win. They're also going to need to root for the Browns, which is very unfamiliar territory for them. So a lot has to happen for them to get in.
Well, and then, I mean, on the Browns game, just for a moment, Chris and I both said earlier, we think the Browns can compete, but expect the Ravens to win. Is that where you come out on this?
Yeah, I think the Browns will compete. Now, they're going to have some good fortune because I think the only way that they can beat the Baltimore Ravens on the road is being able to take away the football and then being able to take care of the football, because the Baltimore Ravens, although they aren't great with takeaways on this little streak that they've gone on, winning 5 of the last 6, they've got 7 takeaways during that
stretch.
Starting
to finally take
exactly.
The ball.
So they're starting to do that. So
that's going to be something you're going to watch, especially with their challenge as far as the passing game. We know that they like to run the ball. This is what I want to look for. If Baker Mayfield can throw for 200 more yards than Lamar Jackson, the Cleveland Browns will win this game. Now, last week I challenged Lamar, throw for over 200 yards. He threw for 201, right at that number. But if Baker Mayfield, so typically Lamar's going to throw for like 150. If Baker Mayfield can throw for 350, that's going to be the winning. So that's what I'll be watching during the game. Just a little tidbit for the fans out there, something to watch.
Chris Canty, thank you so much, as always. Appreciate it. Got to take a break coming up. How much is on the line for Kirk Cousins on Sunday? That's next on First Things First.
He was getting ready to tell him goodbye.
Yeah.
Easy now.
No, he's sticking around.